Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight. Junior doctors accusing the labor director and the PHA of ambush as their strike continues. Meanwhile, BPSU members take their protest to Grand Bahama. How load shedding is impacting churches. Plus, we check out a hackathon for teens.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. A junior doctor strike will continue into the weekend. Members of the Bahamas Doctors Union have accused the Public Hospitals Authority of ambushing a scheduled meeting between the BDU and Acting Labor Director John Pinder today. Jared Higgs has more.
Bahamas Doctors Union President Dr. MELISANDE Bassett says her union had a scheduled meeting with John Pinder, that's the Director of Labor, on Friday morning. However, she says that when she showed up, she saw officials from the PHA and the Minister of Health.
We were quite shocked that they sought to crash this meeting and to sideswipe us with a pairing.
Bassett says the purpose of the meeting was to hand over documents that were requested by Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis following a meeting with the union on Wednesday. The union president slammed Acting Labor Director John Pinder, who confirmed to Our News that he did not let the BDU know that he had invited PHA officials to the 10 a.m. sit-down.
It questions Mr. Pinder's credibility if he can't maintain a clear order in terms of, I want to meet with this side and that side, and then we come together. That is what we expected.
Our News caught up with Health Minister Dr. DUANE as he exited the Department of Labor. He says they expected to have a meeting to bring the matter to an acceptable closure. When asked what he thought of the doctors' union's characterization of the meeting as an ambush, he gave this response.
That's a very strong word. I don't know how that could be possibly the case, since the expectation was, and we prepared for a meeting at 10 o'clock this morning, headed by the Director of Labor.
Pinder says he invited the PHA because only they have the power to resolve the doctors' issues. Sands, on the other hand, was asked if, to the best of his knowledge, the BDU knew that PHA officials would be present.
I can't speak to that, okay? Certainly, from our point of view, we will continue to try and get this matter resolved.
Junior doctors are on strike primarily due to a holiday back pay bill of nearly $5 million. The BDU was set to meet with the PHA on Monday. However, Bassett says today's events have eroded trust.
It only frustrates the situation more. I have, in good faith, been communicating with the minister, letting him know what my position is. We've been back and forth on the phone discussing the proposal and trying to come to an agreement. There are certain things that we have not been able to finalize. This isn't the way you do good negotiations.
In a statement released on Thursday, the Public Hospitals Authority said services at PMH have been reduced to emergencies only due to industrial action by the BDU. The PHA said it deeply regrets the impact of the strike on the delivery of health care. The impacted facilities include PMH, Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, Grand Memorial Hospital, and the Grand Bahama Community Clinics. Reporting for Our News, I am Jared Higgs.
Well, the BDU president also slammed critics whom she says have been spreading propaganda in an attempt to paint doctors in a negative light. A document making the rounds on social media outlines the compensation packages of junior doctors. Bassett contends that a lot of the information is misleading.
Nobody receives casual leave, vacation leave, sick leave in their base pay. Why would you add it to ours? That's foolishness. And anybody with any bit of scrutiny and any bit of intelligence can look at this and see that it's inflated and it's fluffed up to say that we take home $80,000, $88,000 a year. That's a lie. None of us do.
Bassett added that information being spread about doctors' salaries is just a spin.
They have medical insurance, gratuity benefits, education, mileage allowance, uniform allowance, all of these things that many of us do not benefit from. None of us use the medical insurance that they provide. It's such a poor platform. We don't use it. So you allocating money that we never see. Now, if you want to put it in my salary, I'll be happy to take it, but don't deceive the public and make them think that that is what we take home.
Meanwhile, over on Grand Bahama, disgruntled public service workers marched from the office of the Prime Minister to Rand Memorial Hospital in protest of working conditions on the island. Jillian Gray reports.
I have decided to follow Jesus.
In a show of solidarity with fellow members in New Providence, hundreds of members of the Bahamas Public Service Union on Grand Bahama protested in the nation's second city to voice their concerns. It led to this war of words between union leaders and officers.
This our property. This
is ours. I don't know what you're talking about. You ain't need to compromise with the police with that. You can walk where you want to go. I can't stop you, Miss Hamilton. Come on, man. I am Troy. I'm with me. And I ain't support of what's going on. And this benefiting y'all. The thing about it, this benefiting the police and all. You can lock me up all you want. I don't fight anyway. Nobody can fight right now today.
Dozens of workers joined the protest. They say they're fed up with working conditions.
I am a Bahamian and I'm proud to be a Bahamian. Today is not a day. Today is not a day of politics, red, yellow, green, whatever. Today is about Bahamian rights and public officers who are deserving of what we need to come here today to represent.
They don't demonstrate no care, no concern for the people, for the workers.
BPSU Vice President Tasha Hamilton said they are pleased that government is willing to negotiate, but workers must be given what they're owed. She said workers in Grand Bahama are fed up and frustrated, and it's time that something is done.
As public officers, we are working in adverse conditions, many of us. We are working with inadequate equipment and machinery. We are working lack of adequate transportation. We are waiting, some persons, 10, 15 years to be confirmed in their positions. We are working where persons have not received promotions that they qualify for. And so enough is enough. We are frustrated.
Protesters marched from the office of the Prime Minister to Rand Memorial Hospital as workers there walked off the job. Trade unionists argued that working conditions at the hospital and the entire public sector are deplorable.
Post office, where workers are still for years working without air conditioning. We are here standing in solidarity with the casual workers down in the industrial park. We are here in solidarity with the workers in the hotel sector. We are here in solidarity with the taxi drivers. And finally, I can say finally, all union leaders are realizing that it is only through solidarity, it is only through joining hands and supporting each other that we will get anything done.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Well, amid strained labor relations in New Providence, Progressive Liberal Party Chairman Fred Mitchell says it seems Finance Minister Peter Turnquest doesn't really have a handle on the country's finances.
I've been in touch with all of the parties, and they all seem to recognize the fact that the country has some practical issues. No one's intent on destroying the country, but they have to make their point.
On the heels of the Bahamas Public Service Union march to Cabinet Office in Nassau and protests on Grand Bahama, and amid a junior doctor's strike, the PLP chairman said the industrial unrest in the country can't be ignored. Then there's Bahamas Power and Light. Mitchell today pointed the finger squarely at the Minister of Finance.
It appears that the Minister of Finance does not have a handle on what's actually happening financially in the country. For example, to say that you cannot pay public servants the $1,200 that the Prime Minister promised would pay, and that he would pay, and then a couple of days later you jump up and say, I'm going to find the money to pay for BPL. Mind you, 3 days before that, BPL says they couldn't find any money to pay for the generator. So, I mean, what is going on here? It just looks like he does not have control of the country's finances, like it's like the Ministry of Finance doesn't, or the Minister of Finance doesn't know or seem to know what he's doing.
The Prime Minister is scheduled to meet with members of the BPSU tomorrow. Union President Kingsley Ferguson raised concerns over salary increases for public servants and a potential raise in minimum wage. However, earlier this month, Finance Minister Peter Turnquest said government had not given any detailed consideration to increasing minimum wage.
And so our point to the country is let's get the facts so that we know what's happening. The leader of the opposition had said in his presentation on the budget that he had heard that they had to go into overdraft to pay salaries, that their revenue collections are down. They denied all of these things, but it looks as if the chickens are coming home to roost.
Mitchell says he knows there are those who criticize the opposition for hitting out on the government over these issues, considering the PLP was in power just 2 years ago.
The fact is that the election drew a red line under the Progressive Liberal Party's stewardship of the country. The people who are in charge of the country now are the Free National Movement. They boasted that they have all the lines are straight, 2 and 2 adds up to 4. But when you run a government, sometimes 2 and 2 is not 4. 2 and 2 turns out to be 5 sometimes. And you have to make changes for the exigencies which face you. And that's the problem with this Minister of Finance. He's got a hard head, he won't bend, doesn't understand, and of course, Sir Lyndon Pindling told us, if you don't bend, you break.
Well, the National Tripartite Council will make recommendations to the government on increasing the minimum wage before the end of the year, according to Director of Labor John Pinder. This follows recent comments by Minister of Labor Dion Fowkes, who said there are currently ongoing talks with the council about increasing minimum wage. The minimum wage was increased from $150 per week to $210 per week in mid-2015. Before that, the minimum wage hadn't increased since January 2002. Pinder said the government should consider introducing a livable wage. In other news, the ongoing power crisis is taking a toll on local churches, according to Christian Council President Bishop DELTON FERNANDER, who says frequent power outages are negatively impacting Sunday morning services and funerals. FERNANDER is now requesting a meeting with BPL officials. Jasmine Brown reports.
The church is affected too.
Power outages have become a daily occurrence in New Providence in recent months due to BPL's generation shortfall. In addition to local churches being impacted, Fernander says their members are also in misery, especially those who are bedridden.
I've had people come to me and talk about their loved ones suffering at home because they're ill. And when the power goes off, not all of us are fortunate enough to have generators, i.e. even the church, not fortunate enough to have generators.
On Tuesday, Finance Minister Peter Turnquest vowed that no finances will be spared to bring about a short-term solution to ongoing power woes. The Deputy Prime Minister also revealed the Minister administration may have to borrow the money to make it happen. Fernander says he is happy to hear the government is finally taking the issue seriously.
It is a national crisis, and we are glad that the government of the day and the powers that be are seeing it as such. And we really look for, as a nation, all of us are looking for this to be answered and to be turned around, and not just meet the capacity, but plan for further growth.
As for BPL officials, the BCC leader says he'd like to see them give a clearer picture of the power generation crisis.
We would like to sit and hear what's your generation plan. Don't give us general statements. Don't give us pie in the sky type. We'll do it, we'll do anything. We need to sit, we got competent engineers in the Christian Council, and we can convene a meeting and analyze your plan, and then we'll support it.
Reporting for R News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
All right, thanks, Jasmine. Still to come, the teachers' union concerns some schools won't be ready in time for September 2nd. Stay tuned.